live, albeit virtually, or for those of you viewing this later on video, I am pleased to have the opportunity to share some information about what I think is a very important megatrend that is very relevant for our industry, and that is personalization. So let's maybe start out with the definition of personalization. There's a lot of them in various dictionaries, but I found this one from a website called Trend Monitor, which you would think something called Trend Monitor is pretty good at monitoring trends. But I chose this one because I think the first part of the definition defines it pretty well, but the second part shown in italics is one of the key points we want to discuss today. So it says that personalization is the tailoring of a service or product to accommodate an individual's requirement. And I like that because it's fairly simple and concise, and it means something to me as both a clinician and a consumer. But it goes on to say that personalization is now widely regarded as a global megatrend. So before we consider this megatrend notion further, we'll circle back to that. But let me share a few more definitions that I find interesting and potentially relevant to this discussion, at least kind of related. So here's one from a recent New York Times article. And they use the word ultra-personalization. So this suggests to me that there's maybe different levels or layers of personalization. They define it like this. With more choices than ever, consumers seek products and services that are ultra personalized to their specific preferences and lifestyles. They want their individual differences to be addressed and like to engage with brands that seem to speak directly to them. So that's kind of interesting. These degrees of personalization suggest that what was accepted as okay or satisfactory in the past might not be enough anymore. So I think we might be able to relate to the change in expectations of the emerging patient population coming into clinics these days. So I think this description applies, and hopefully you agree. Here's another one, customization. Now, some people might say this is a synonym for personalization, but I'm not totally sure. I definitely think they're related. But this says that there's a new phase in the broader trend to offer customers personalized products that involve customization not only in aesthetic in nature, but also based on features unique to the customer. Now, as somebody that works for a hearing aid manufacturer, you can probably see why I think this one applies, because certainly that's one of the main things we do in the development of our products and our signal processing algorithms and everything else is try and come up with not only aesthetically appealing things, but features that are based on unique customer needs and desires. So here's another one, individualization, another kind of sort of synonym, but this one says it's a globalization, a trend that affects all spheres of life of modern persons, causing the transformation of social relations and social character. That one I thought was interesting because of that reference to social relations. Certainly, we're interested in those because the products that we deliver and the services that you provide can potentially have a big impact on social relations. Anyway, I think all these terms are related and applicable across industries and are certainly relevant for ours. But I did find one more that I hadn't seen before when I was doing some research for this. Premiumization. Now, I'm not sure this is actually even a real word, but coming back to Trend Monitor, they think so. And they say that it's a growing movement towards being more selective about what we buy, to invest in fewer but better products and services tailored specifically to our needs, personality, and taste. So I don't necessarily like a made-up term so much, but I like the sentiment or the definition of this one. You'll notice that I bolded the words "and services," because I think often we focus too much on the products we fit and maybe not enough on the services we provide. But this is exactly where we can really deliver something more personalized in services. And by the way, I hope you can forgive the American spelling of all these words ending with "zation." What can I say? I'm from the US originally, and I live in Canada now. And while I've not lived in the US for over 15 years, it still just looks wrong to me to spell words with an S that to me should have a Z. So you'll have to forgive my US spelling there. So I've got one last definition now that kind of takes us back to where we started. And that's the definition of what a megatrend is. And again, you can find many definitions out there, but this one comes from the Monash Business School, and they call it a major movement, pattern, or trend emerging in the macro environment, an emerging force likely to have a significant impact on the kinds of products consumers will wish to buy in the foreseeable future. Now, they go on to say that megatrends evident in today's include growing interest in health, leisure, lifestyle, and environmental issues. And certainly our products and services have the potential to impact at least three of those: health, leisure, and lifestyle. So that's a lot of definitions on one page, but I hope you can see the interconnectedness or interrelatedness to them, but also the subtle nuances that each one of those bring and why I find them all relevant. So regardless of which terms or terms you use and their corresponding definitions, you could probably find others that are relevant too. But the point is that customers worldwide and consumers worldwide are demanding personalized products and services. And that's true for fashion, for cars, for holidays, fitness programs, and on and on. And from what I can tell, this trend is not just passing and regional, but it's at least to some degree found in virtually all regions, industries, age groups, and genders. Now, I hope maybe you noticed that I used the word customers and consumers there. And I know those words are sometimes prone to offend our clinical sensibilities, mine too. But the reality is that modern patients are not just passive recipients of healthcare, but active consumers of it. There's whole books written around the new healthcare consumer. So don't be offended when I use the term consumer in this context, because I think it's important to recognize that consumer trends are relevant also for hearing healthcare. But I'm not suggesting that you only sell a product. Quite the contrary, as you'll see as we proceed through this presentation. And I do think it's really important to stress again that the point that this trend, this mega trend of personalization, applies not just to the products, but also to the services as well. And I remain convinced that for us as hearing care professionals, fitting hearing aids and us developing them, we have to deliver both products and services that deliver an experience and not just a transaction. I mean, it's no coincidence that our slogan is Love the Experience, because we really want to be our best partner in delivering a differentiated experience and not just a product that leads to a transaction. So let's come back now to this megatrends idea for a moment. I found a couple of visuals online that I found interesting. Here's one from a company called the Bressler Group, and they list the 10 consumer megatrends reshaping design. Now, you might not think that design is particularly relevant for you, but it's really relevant for us as a manufacturer. And I think the trends they're talking about have more broad relevance anyway. And at least 5 of these are very relevant for us. The quest for convenience, empowered individuals, connection, wellness, and perhaps also this radical personalization, which I think is maybe another way of saying ultra personalization, which was one of those definitions we looked at earlier. I work for a manufacturer now, but I come from the clinical world where you are. And so I kind of want to focus more on what all this means for clinicians, for you and your clients now, and not just us as a developer of hearing aids. So I have one other kind of fun image that comes from the Zukunft Institute. That's a German for Future Institute. I think it's a Swiss company. And it's obviously inspired by underground subway maps, like from London or maybe other cities as well. So it's kind of cool looking. And there's way too much to look at here in detail, but a few of the megatrends that are on this megatrend map, if you will, I think are very relevant for us. That includes the Silver Society, which is another way to talk about the aging population or the baby boomers. Health, I mean, we're a healthcare profession after all. Connectivity, is that ever relevant? I mean, some days don't you feel like more of an app and Bluetooth expert than an actual hearing care provider? And then, of course, individualization, which is another word for personalization, the main trend we're talking about today. And what I really like about this image is it shows how there's interconnectivity between the trends. So, for example, you've got digital health, pro-aging, digital literacy, touchless technology, social networks, work-life blending. That highlights just a few. And then what about big data? That's a topic, kind of a buzzword these days that we're hearing about more and more. And certainly we're looking at as a company with large data samples to inform what we do and what we develop. So almost every trend or megatrend map or article you look at has something along the lines of personalization or individualization, customization as one of those trends. Now, one other recent shared experience that I think has had a huge impact on all of us personally and professionally too is the COVID pandemic. I mean, the fact that we're having this virtual webinar now and that it's so commonplace to us is partly a consequence of this. I mean, we used to hold webinars, but now, I mean, I spend most of my life staring at this computer screen. Incidentally, this one's particularly painful for me because, not because I got COVID, so as far as I know, I've somehow escaped that. But in 2020, I was supposed to be in Australia and New Zealand for the whole month of May. I was coming down for the launch of Discover Next for the roadshows that were being done. I've never been to New Zealand. I've been to Australia once, but I was really, really excited to finally visit New Zealand. And then I was going to spend some time on vacation while I was there. And the pandemic hit in March, and I had to completely cancel those plans. And here we are, almost 2.5 years later, sitting here having these live meetings via webinars, which is great. I mean, it's wonderful that we have this ability to connect, but it certainly affected my work life. And it certainly had some consequences for clinicians as well. I mean, consumers, and there's that word again, say patients if you prefer, but we know that they expect a greater level of digitization. And so for us, a concrete example of this may be remote support, maybe even remote fittings in some cases in the really depth of the pandemic when people couldn't get out and about. There's these mixed and blended service models that have fewer touch points in person. E-commerce is not really just a rare luxury, but it's become pretty much a given these days. And with a few exceptions, like maybe my father, who's one of those tech dinosaurs who would rather do anything than go online or touch a smartphone. But most consumers, even older ones, are now used to online interactions, and in some cases, they may even prefer them. So I think the pandemic was sort of an accelerant of trends that were already happening in that way. Okay, so enough about definitions and trends and pandemic and all that. Let's come back to kind of a fun picture. Now you might be wondering why this image is relevant for us, and you'll see in a moment. And you might have seen this once before because we used a similar image in some of the early presentations on Blue. But I love this image, but I'm pretty sure I would love it even more if it was orange, because it's been my favorite color from the time I was a little child. And maybe if it was pimped out a little bit, to use that MTV generation word, it could be even cooler than it already is. I mean, isn't the journey more enjoyable when you're able to make something fit your style and your needs and your wants? And obviously, here's some really cool images of minibuses that have been personalized. So you might be asking yourself after all this talk and all these pictures, what any of this has to do with hearing instruments, what it has to do with you. But the point that I'm trying to make is that personalization applies to just about everything these days. So this poses some interesting challenges for you and for us as a manufacturer of hearing aids, and certainly in the clinical world. Because personalization can mean multiple things. I mean, it's always been relevant with hearing aids, because despite of the effectiveness of the average defaults that are often used in setting features and parameters, no two individuals will have the exact same hearing loss, listening needs, priorities, and style sensibilities. But as we just saw from those slides, that's what people are expecting now, is that we deliver something much more personalized to them. Now, clients have been able to choose styles and colors for many years. I mean, for a few years, you remember in the last maybe 12 to 15 years ago, particularly when RICs were gaining in popularity, all kinds of colors and patterns were available, although we know not often selected. I loved some of these, but we know that most of them weren't used very much. These are examples from a variety of different manufacturers. You probably recognize most of them. You don't see too many of those these days because the pendulum has kind of swung back away from these garish colors to the more traditional skin and hair tones. But still, it shows that manufacturers were trying to address style as one of the areas of personalization and get away from the big beige banana behind the ear. But regardless of color and shape, most people really don't want them to be noticeable. So the trend again has been to move back towards the more subtle colors. And obviously we offer a variety of colors and options there. But the point I'm trying to make is that real personalization is about much more than just how they look. It's about how they sound. So we believe at Unitron that true personalization for each client is about much more than just the colors, and it's even about more than the fine tuning, and it starts well before the actual fitting and continues long after the fitting. So we tend to think of personalization as something we do in the fitting software. And certainly there are options there that we'll look at. But I want you to think beyond that. Think before they come into the clinic or before the fitting, and think after that as well. So to try and address all of this, the demands, if you will, of this mega trend of personalization, we offer unique, what we call experience innovations that are designed to help you engage clients as active partners in the process right from the beginning. Now, we're not going to cover all of them in detail now, but I wanted to remind you about a couple of these experience innovations that are particularly relevant and useful in delivering a more personalized experience, and that are at least to some degree unique from Unitron, or at least in our take on them. So I want to call out our innovative trial and advanced sound performance trackers, which are designed to deliver data-driven insights to you and your clients to help optimize the experience, to increase satisfaction and peace of mind, and to make it a lot more personalized. So maybe the most obvious of these is our innovative Flex trial devices, which increase hearing aid acceptance by allowing clients to experience the benefits of amplification in the real world. Now, those of you that have known Unitron for a while certainly have heard many a presentation about Flex Trial. Hopefully, most of you already use them. We started to offer these, believe it or not, in 2012, 10 years ago. But Flex Trial, this means that clients can take great sounding products home for a real world assessment that extends potentially the hearing assessment outside of the clinic and into the real world, the places where they live and work and play. So they can experience how hearing instruments perform in their day-to-day lives, while at the same time you end up getting a much more complete picture of their listening needs, and all of that without the intense pressure of making a decision or a final commitment right away. You add to that Logadol, which came a few years later. Logadol captures real-life user data during the initial trial and beyond, reflecting the current acoustic lifestyle, enabling you to have a more evidence-based conversation with each client to provide that more personalized hearing solution. And if I had to pick a favorite, this is probably mine of all of our experience innovations, because I do think it was a bit of a true game changer in the way that you can engage clients in the process better than ever before. Now, the point is that people don't always remember every detail, and Logadol means that they don't have to. Instead of relying on the memory of your clients, most of whom just are not very good historians about their acoustic environments, you can use real-life evidence as part of your recommendation and counseling process. Now, so during that real-world trial and after purchase as well, the hearing instruments will continue to collect all this insight about their listening needs. It goes way beyond traditional data logging, which only tracks the time spent in a program or maybe wearing time and volume adjustments. Logadol actually tracks, as you know, the amount of time spent in each of our 7 listening environments, regardless of the selected technology level. Now, you probably already know all that. But what you may or may not know is that Logadol just became or is becoming even more powerful and compelling. We've added clear new visuals to make it easier to compare coverage across technology levels. Plus, I like what you're seeing on the left here. And then there's this whole new performance section to reinforce the features that are available at different levels for high and low complexity environments, with additional scores for easy comparison across the technology levels. So you'll have everything you need to engage in more meaningful data-driven conversations about the appropriate technology level for each client's needs. Now, we're not going to cover these enhancements to Logadol in detail tonight. That would be a whole separate presentation. Some of you may have already heard it. If not, I'm sure your local Unitron representatives will be reaching out to you very shortly, because this will be coming with the 5.3 release of TrueFit, which is kind of going live as we speak. So if you haven't seen it yet, you're going to be seeing it very soon. And then they will go through this in detail to help you understand what these new comparative scores, and in particular, this whole new performance section, what that's all about. So I'm teasing you with that. If you haven't heard about it yet, stay tuned. You'll like it. It'll make Logadol even that much better. Another cool option in this realm of personalization is the Remote Plus app with ratings. Now, there's a lot of things that they can do in the app, but ratings is one of them. And this allows them to very easily share their perception of how the hearing aids are functioning in real time, right in a specific moment. They can specify if they're satisfied or dissatisfied and what environment they believe they're in, along with any additional notes about what they're experiencing. But at the same time, on the flip side, once a rating is submitted, you not only gain the insight from the clients, but you also get a sort of snapshot of the hearing aid's performance in that moment, what it was classified as, and if that matches up with the client's perception of the environment they're in. So this insight can provide additional valuable information to make a more personalized recommendation, adjustments, foster more meaningful counseling, and so on. Ratings are still not used a ton, but they're increasing as people are using the app more and more. And I think there's a lot of potential here to delve into this realm of what's called EMA, or ecological momentary assessment, which is another topic that I know is being studied and talked about a lot in Australia and New Zealand. This is sort of our easy tool to deliver this ecological momentary assessment. And there's a lot more potential for that. And I believe we're going to see it continue to increase in how that's used or how much it's used and what we can gain from that. So all those performance innovations, which I think you're probably already familiar with, it was just kind of a reminder, they're great for creating and leveraging data-driven insights to help get the most from each hearing care experience. But these days, even that's not really enough. We have data. I talked about big data earlier as one of the other mega trends, and we have data from thousands of fittings that shows that our automatic program works great for most people most of the time without the need for any real actions from the user other than just wearing them. Our Integra OS system, we're not going to talk about that in detail tonight. That's, again, a topic for another time. You're probably already familiar with it, but we know that it works great for most people most of the time. So clients can just wear their hearing aids and forget them. But we also know that once in a while, clients may encounter circumstances where their needs or expectations in that moment don't quite match the automatically selected settings. Maybe the default settings are not quite right, and the client would prefer something than the average or typical response for a very specific circumstance. Easy, meaningful personalization options that the client can make themselves can really enhance their experience. Now, you have always been able to fine-tune settings to something that deviates from average defaults if it's appropriate. But this can be time-consuming and difficult, especially when the need for something different is only occasional in a very specific real-world circumstance that's not easily replicated in the clinic. It's just not the same as being able to make changes, that the desired changes right in the moment in the real world. And the other thing that happens is if you make changes for an occasional need, you can mess up regular usage. I know when I was still practicing, sometimes I would have clients that would come back a lot with a very specific situation where they were struggling. And I'd work and work and work to fine tune the hearing aids. And I remember telling a couple of them, what I really need is to be able to go with you to the situation where you're in. Obviously, that's not practical, but some of these tools allow you to do that. Ratings kind of let you go with them and in a way. And now, instead of having to alter the overall automatic performance of the hearing aid, they can actually do some additional personalizing themselves. So those revolving door clients can really more proactively handle situations. And we know that it's not appealing to everybody. Not everybody wants to use an app. But as clients evolve and become more connected, more tech savvy, and more demanding of control and individualization, really, it's not just a nice to have anymore, but it's coming an expectation or even a necessity. Clients want to be able to personalize their hearing experience on demand, and we believe that you want to help facilitate this without increasing complexity and time and fine-tuning. Now, why do we think that? Well, because you told us, maybe not you specifically, but we did extensive focus groups and interviews particularly as we were developing the Blue platform and the app was evolving for Blue to find out how we could do even better. And there was a strong desire for more and better options in the app. And so hopefully you experienced a big leap forward in our Remote Plus app when the Blue platform launched with that latest version of the app. Now, it's important to mention when we start talking about personalization by the client, him or herself, that the intention is definitely not to take you, the professional, out of the picture and just open up a whole host of parameters for the client to start fiddling with. We all know that occasional engineering client who might love that, who basically wants the fitting software themselves. But the point is that control isn't about controlling everything. It's about controlling what really matters or makes a difference in the moment. So now let me give you a few concrete examples of what we've done recently with Blue to elevate the personalization capabilities for the client. Most users simply want to be able to boost either speech clarity or comfort beyond the usually adequate default settings in the automatic program. And that's just what's possible now with the Remote Plus app. While they're in the automatic program, right from the home screen in the app, they can select either a comfort or clarity button. And then doing so will activate a preset combination of adjustments to directionality, speech enhancement, and noise reduction, along with some frequency shaping. So if it sounds better, I mean, it's an immediate effect. So if it sounds better, great. If not, it can be deselected the same way with just a touch. And what's important to know is these changes do not permanently alter the automatic program. It resets after rebooting the hearing aids if the client doesn't manually leave that change. So you still maintain control over the overall automatic functionality, and the client can't permanently mess anything up. But it still gives them a really quick and easy tweak to the automatic settings right there in the moment. And then if the client is in a listening situation where he or she really wants to make substantial changes outside the parameters of the automatic program, there's also now the convenient option to select from 6 preset manual programs available right in the app. Now, after selecting one of these, the client can adjust speech enhancement, noise reduction, the directional microphone focus, and also then the equalizer just within that program. The effects of any changes they make are applied immediately. They don't even have to save anything. And then within that client selected manual program, the user adjustments are retained, in this case, for easy access again in a similar situation in the future. So this is different from the automatic comfort and clarity buttons, which are not permanent. They're temporary. These stay, these persist in that client selected manual program. So it's easy to access them again in the future. And that program appears in the program list now, and it's still further adjustable down the road. So the point is, instead of having to describe a challenging situation to you after the fact at a follow-up visit when they're not really remembering it very clearly, and when maybe they can't describe it very well, the clients can make the changes when they're needed or wanted and experience results immediately right in the moment. So this has the potential to mean a lot less time for you spent trying to make adjustments for those very specific circumstances in later follow-up visits. Many clients will really never need anything more than the automatic programs. But a good example of these manual programs and what they offer is a music environment. Music preferences can really vary a lot from person to person. I mean, if like me, you like 80s punk rock, you probably prefer a different sound profile than somebody who likes symphonic or choral music. You take the flower children from the 60s, the baby boomers who are starting to fill up the schedules more and more these days, they may prefer a very different musical vibe, if you will, than their parents did. And we know that you probably remember we used to offer, we had our My Music settings, the musical genres that were available in the app. But, oops, I went too far, sorry. Wouldn't it be more convenient if the clients could just make music genre selections themselves right in the moment? And of course, they can now. We shifted the My Music genre options that used to be available in TrueFit for You, and we put them into the app. So now clients can choose the musical style or genre they prefer right in the moment, and kind of own the music experience a bit more. Because like I said, music is very personal, and it's really hard clinically to find the right music settings. And this allows the clients to really personalize that experience. Just a really good example of this extra level of personalization the app offers. And again, not everybody will use it. The general music setting is great a lot of the time, but it gives that ability for those people that really crave it. Now, we did a market survey a few months after we launched Blue, like we always do with every platform. And we asked customers like yourselves, for clients that use the Remote Plus app with all these improvements, on a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied are they with the changes and with these new features? And we were very pleased with the positive responses, about 8 out of 10 overall. So we really hope that you're experiencing similar positive reactions from your clients to the improvements that we made with the app and all of those in-the-moment personalization options that are now there. Now, as I said before, most clients will need and use these in-the-moment manual program options only on rare occasions. But even if they don't use them very often, knowing they can, if needed, can still provide the extra reassurance and feelings of empowerment and control that a lot of the newer, younger clients are kind of craving and demanding. And the next time a client visits your clinic after connecting to TrueFit, you'll still have full transparency of any additional app programs that the client may have added and any adjustments they've made. So you can discuss with them why they did that, better foster that kind of client engagement again, and also make further adjustments yourself in TrueFit and kind of foster that more effective counseling. So it's really a great option to further improve follow-up appointments as well, just for the point of the conversation that it can lead to when you view those programs they've added and what changes they've made and why. And don't forget later, if further fine-tuning is needed, you can still use one of our continuous care innovations, one of the other experience innovations, Remote Adjust, to make and send your professional adjustments to any program, automatic, manual, or any of the optional app programs, to be applied via the app whenever it's convenient for the client. Now, this non-disruptive asynchronous approach to remote support that we introduced with Discover Next has actually been very positively received, particularly in regards to the simplicity of our approach, as well as the flexibility it provides you and your clients in terms of when to make and apply adjustments. Now, I know that a lot of our competitors, including our sister company, have real-time kind of live remote adjust options. And I like the idea of that too, but I also know from a lot of big data studies that have been done that they're not used very much. They're a bit too disruptive. You have to schedule those appointments. They force you to alter your day around virtual appointments. And that may have some merit and is something that we may offer in the future. I'm not saying it's bad at all, but right now we've taken the approach to go a bit less disruptive with the asynchronous approach that you can do the changes whenever you want and the client can apply them whenever they want. So it's not disrupting your normal day-to-day clinical flow, but it still allows you that extra level of personalization to address those needs out in the field without clients having to return to the clinic every time. So that's a lot, actually. When we introduced the Blue platform, and this one actually came with Discover Next, but towards the end there, we really did offer a lot of introduce a lot of new options in this realm of personalization. So I mean, personalization or customization, whatever you want to call it, it's this big mega trend that we talked about at the beginning that's really starting to affect many aspects of modern life. But I guess this comes back to the question, does any of this really matter for us, for you clinically? Do you really care? I just showed you some fun slides about megatrends and a bunch of stuff about all the things that we offer. But I mean, what's the point? Do you care? Well, I hope you do. I think it matters. And I suspect you do, because I mean, if you think about it, although we're all pretty average much of the time, we're also each unique. We all want to feel that we're not receiving just the same thing as the next person, but that we're getting a product and an experience that's unique to each of us. And that's certainly true when buying a car or consumer electronics or even fashion these days, all of which are offering more and more options to sort of express a person's individuality. So why should the experience of trying and buying something as important, meaningful, and potentially expensive as hearing aids be any less individualized? We really believe it's time to empower your clients to hear how they want, when they want. And that's the reason for all of those tools that we just talked about. So to conclude, let me just say, we know that you have many options when you select manufacturing partners who will provide the products that you fit and sell. But we also strongly believe that an effective clinician-supplier relationship goes well beyond just a product. A recent Forbes magazine article made the statement that with personalization at the center of a new age of healthcare, patients will be able to reach new levels of health and wellness. So I really hope that you've seen how serious we take that at Unitron and how we're continually innovating to enable you to deliver not only great performing technology, but also to provide you with the tools to deliver an overall personalized experience you and your clients will love. So that's pretty much everything I have for you. We went just a few minutes over time. My work from home assistant just joined me right on my desk here. He's telling me that it's time to end too. So I'm done with what I had prepared for you. I'm totally happy to take any questions or comments if there's discussion, but if you all need to go, because time's up, I'm fine with that too. So I'll stop talking and turn it back over to my colleagues in New Zealand and can guide what we do next.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Douglas and Winston. We love you.
Say hi, Winston. He's like, it's time to go downstairs and do some yoga. He usually do yoga this time of night, and he loves it.
Oh, so cute. Well, is there anyone here on the live talk that wants to ask Douglas a question, or anyone that's on the call has a comment? If not, that's okay. We did collect with your RSVPs. Oh, wait, my mouse. We did collect a couple of favorite sounds, like we asked on your RSVP, what's your favorite sounds? And there are so many good ones, and hopefully you can also relate. Most of the people said that they like the ocean waves breaking on the shore, and waterfalls, so a lot of like water sounds. Rain on the roof at night, that's great. Sarah said, my boy's laughter, which is so cute. And yeah, we also asked you guys what's your favorite Unitron feature, and many people said about the Flex trial, which is great because that means that you guys know about these personalization tools. So it's awesome. And I guess that's it. We just wanted to share some of those answers. And you guys have any questions for Douglas here at Sonoma?
Anybody who's still awake is welcome to come on screen if you want to make any comments or questions.
No, I think our team is fine. Okay, well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Douglas, for your time again and for your wisdom.
My pleasure. I hope sometime I can come meet you all in person. Like I said, I was supposed to be there in 2020, and the pandemic ruined all that. So it's one of the few places on the map where we do business that I have not been lucky enough to visit yet. So it's the top of my list to get to New Zealand.
Bring the cat with you as well.
Yes, bring Winston.
I actually am going to a cottage for a week in July, and I take him with me. He likes to ride in the car. He's like a dog.
Thank you, Caroline. We are having some comments here on the chat. Let me just see. Oh, let's get the chat. Caroline is saying thank you.
Just saying thanks. Okay. I think everybody's ready to move on to their next part of their day. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.